You know that there are a lot of people crossing and you hear horror stories, but it's something altogether different to see human trafficking trophies on the side of the road, right? Like they hang on trees, women and children's clothing. And it's like you go all day and you don't see any men's clothing, right? And you're like, what happened to the, like, how did these people leave? What's their story, right? It's not good. And there's a lot of it. And we were intimidated when we were on the trail. It was very clear that like they didn't want people in that area.
I want to make it clear they're not like being negligent or whatever. That's they're bound by orders.
That's right.
Right.
And that's the case in like so many of these situations. The people involved on the ground are very patriotic and they only want the best possible things, right? And regardless of like what you said, they may have an opinion one way or another about amnesty and whether or not people should be allowed in the United States. But everyone can agree that like the child trafficking and the crimes that are happening at our border, they have to stop. And they're powerless because they don't have enough manpower, they don't have enough resources, and they don't have the authority, they don't have the commands from above to be like, keep this place safe. The most shocking thing I saw, or at least the thing that like emotionally moved me the most, was one of the people with us, Nick, picked up a wallet and he opened it and he took out like the only thing left in the wallet was a picture of a child. And it didn't occur to me why that was at first, right? I'm like, why would they leave the wallet with the photo and take the money? That doesn't. And then I'm like, oh, well, clearly they were robbed, right? And someone took the money and discarded the wallet and the photo. But like, it just makes you think about like the families and the people that are doing this.
Welcome back to another episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. This is a special episode where we have Penny with us again. His is a second time appearance here, but we are going to focus on, he took a trip to the border, our southern border here on the U.S., with a guide, with a team to really see firsthand what is going on. And I just want to make it very clear that this is not a political episode. We're not left or right or blue or red or any of that kind of stuff. There is some serious things going down at the border right now. There are human lives being negatively impacted, and Penny was there and saw it. So we are here to just simply talk about what he saw, raise awareness to that. And in reality, our government is kind of allowing this to happen, and that's the problem. It's not a partisan thing. It's an American problem that we need to fix. So Penny, over to you, man. Why don't you just walk us through kind of what you did, what your mission was, what you were trying to uncover with your trip there with your team, and we'll just go through it together.
Yeah, so me and a couple friends were, just out really trying to figure out what's going on. My friend Diligent and I do a lot of work on X together. He does breaking news spaces. He is a political guy, and I co-host for him all the time just because the two of us get along really well and we work well together. So we're sort of like building on X together. Well, he flew out specifically for this border trip, and it was, I live in San Diego, so I'm like, I gotta go, right? He's right here. He has a guide, he like rented a vehicle, and what other opportunity am I going to have to like really make a difference, right? Like I have a platform, I can expose things that are happening to a different audience than might see it, if otherwise just like a border reporter put it out on their feed, right? Like they don't follow them, things like of that nature. So, I decided to go do some actual, real journalism, like experience it myself instead of just talk about it. And I was shocked, right? Like, that there are a lot of people crossing and you hear horror stories, but it's something altogether different to see human trafficking trophies on the side of the road, right? Like they hang on trees, women and children's clothing. And it's like, you go all day and you don't see any men's clothing, right? And you're like, what happened to the, like, how did these people leave? What's their story, right? It's not good. And there's a lot of it. And we were intimidated when we were on the trail. It was very clear that, like, they didn't want people in that area, just, like, generally speaking. Yeah, I mean, it was a wild experience. So I'm, like, happy to answer any questions, but definitely it was horror.
Yeah.
What I
doing the
witnessed.
intimidating?
Okay, so you don't know who it is, right? And I don't want to research it to the depth where, you know, it could come back on them or me, because I just don't want that sort of mess, right? But we were driving in when we first started, and we were following a Jeep. So there were two vehicles, both four-wheel drive vehicles, both with multiple people in them. And I guess we're in an area, and the way that Anthony, our guide, described it was, you just don't have any business there unless you are smuggling across the border, or you are, you know, like a cop, like a border patrol, whatever, right? Or really no other reason. Like, you would never go on a date there. Like, you wouldn't, like, bring a girl there, like, go play football with your friends there. It's just like a place you don't go. So when we're there, like, instantly the locals know, like, these people are probably, you know, like, they're up to something. Either they're reporting or, you know, whatever, right? So they had all eyes on us, and we got trailed on the way in. And I'm talking, like, there's no one else, right? Middle of nowhere. It feels very deserty, even though you're, like, very close to the city of San Diego. You feel very isolated. You can see the border wall. But aside from that, it's like dirt, right? Dirt and hills. And they're, like, within feet of our rear bumper, just, like, for an extended period of time following us. Eventually, they pulled off, and they didn't continue. And, like, you know, we went off and did our tour, right? And we then were up on a hill at one point, and we were getting, like, there was I forget the way that he described the man, but he had been, like, a previous border, not like a border patrol, but someone who, you know, was helping out there, right? And they died. So there was, like, a memorial, and we were up getting the story, and down on the ground, the same truck is doing donuts, like throwing up tons of dirt, clearly trying to intimidate us and, like, show us that, like, we're in their neighborhood, right? And we don't belong there. So that was the extent of the intimidating. And we didn't have anyone, like, come up on us any closer than that, but it was pretty scary just to have someone tailing you in the middle of nowhere like that. And then, you know, again, on the ground, them doing those donuts, it's like, you know that it was a show for us, right? I'd never felt, like, super worried because we had so many people and we were well prepared. But I could see how people otherwise would not come back. Our guide was armed. Yeah. So we were armed, but it was nice. Like,
okay. I was gonna say I would definitely bring the artillery, man.
Yeah, and I think probably most people who, you know, head down there are, right. I mean, I don't know. I would, if I wasn't with people that knew what they were doing, I certainly wouldn't go back, right? I would have been, like, very intimidated, and I think that's the whole point. They're just like, they don't want people to see what's going on because there's so much money in it, right? And, like, I could speculate on all the different ways they make money besides just, you know, what they charge to traffic the people specifically, right? But then it goes so much deeper than that into, like, all sorts of just really frightening things that I have no evidence for, but, you know, you hear the rumors, and it's just,
yeah. Well,
you don't want that
point,
in your
we
backyard.
We have talked to experts on that, and the reason human trafficking is so profitable for criminal organizations like that is because, unlike a drug that is used up one time, a person can be reused. And as horrible as that is, that's the reality of what's happening. And so that's why they do this. But what was, I guess, just up front, the most shocking thing that you saw? Was it those trophies? Was it something else? I mean, did you guys interact with Border Patrol, or did you talk to anyone?
We did interact with the Border Patrol.
Walk us through kind of the total experience, and then, you know, we can kind of dive into things as they come up.
I'll hit on those 2 points at least. So the most shocking thing I saw, or at least the thing that like emotionally moved me the most, was one of the people with us, Nick, picked up a wallet and he opened it and he took out like the only thing left in the wallet was a picture of a child. And it didn't occur to me why that was at first, right? I'm like, why would they leave the wallet with the photo and take the money? That doesn't, and then I'm like, oh, well, clearly they were robbed, right? And someone took the money and discarded the wallet and the photo. But like, it just makes you think about like the families and the people that are doing this, right? And like, I don't have anything against anyone who's trying to get here to have a better life specifically. Like that doesn't mean that I think it should be a free for all for them to get across, but I understand why they do. And like, I respect and appreciate them as people. Right. But then there's like all these like really horrific and shocking things that make it a lot less debatable to me. Right. And it's like, we have just absolutely got to do something about this because there are families and people that are getting, torn apart as a result of, I mean, I don't know. Is it because it's political? Like some of the things that the guide said were like, we had tons of like state of the art equipment on the border that was enabled, high tech cameras and like even like seismic sensors to notice for people drilling holes and things like that, right? And the day that the Biden administration took over, it all got turned off and it all got looted, right? So like it's not even there anymore because even like copper was like torn up and taken and sold. And it's like, for what, right? We wasted all of that. And we had this problem addressed. And it was like, we decided to reopen it. And why else if not political? And, like, yeah, I don't have much else to say about that.
Yeah, they're just trying to bus in everybody they can to these swing states. Let's just be real.
It does seem like that, that's a prevailing theory, and I don't.
It's not a theory. There's facts on it. Like there's video footage. There's proof of everything. It's eventually it's gonna bust wide open, but it's gonna be too late. I mean, that's the point. They don't care.
It does seem like they just do a much better job of dodging the issue, right? It's like, I think if there was anything, if I'm going to give like Kamala credit for the debate, it's like every time Donald Trump made a good point, she just didn't talk about it in her response at all. She just forgot about it. That was beautiful. It was a great strategy because then everyone else forgot about it too, right? Whereas if she made a point or like offended him, he was like going on about whatever it was. And even if it's truthful, everything he's saying, the way they fact check it and made it look, it was all, yeah, that was bad. So I did run into the Border Patrol as well. It was near the end of the night in the evening. And so we went in the afternoon. We met at a location I won't disclose to like drop off any cars and things that we own that we, like whatever, right? And then left from there to the border. That was like in the early afternoon. We had like a Yeti full of food and drinks, so like we could go the whole day. We were well prepared. We had like a battery. We had 2 Starlinks, one on each vehicle so that we were connected at all times. The one on the Jeep was like mounted on the back so that like it was obvious to anyone who saw us that we were connected to, right? We had another one. We had a Mini just like propped up on the dash of the second car, right? And like a major ad for Starlink, it like worked beautifully the whole time as well. So we got there in the early afternoon and we went through a bunch of spots, right? Like he was pointing out spots where they had repaired the wall, and he showed the difference between the Trump wall and the old wall because there's like areas that it wasn't finished and it's still the old wall, so you can see that, right? He showed us areas where there is no wall and like you can literally just like go through. It's like a broken wooden fence, and behind the broken wooden fence on one side is like some brush, and that brush is in Mexico, and on this side you're in the United States, and like we got film of like one of us just like going under and coming back, and it's like there's nothing, right? So like even though there is border fence in other places, there's places where you can, I mean, like you can just walk by, and there's no border patrol around, right? Like we did it, like we just went back and forth. It's like they're not stopping you, right? And even when someone gets picked up by the border patrol, this was kind of like, I guess maybe I knew it already, but I hadn't processed it. They don't bring them back across the border. So like they're not afraid of getting picked up by border patrol. Once they get across the border, they actually want to get picked up by border patrol, because that's when they get processed and they get sent wherever they're going to go. And, you know, they have like, they set their date where they need to go to court or whatever it is, right, to apply for their amnesty. So like there's these pickup locations, and they have like porta potties, and there's water set up for them, and like we witnessed so I mentioned like places where they had repaired holes in the fence. Along the way he was pointing out there was like a church, right, on the other side of the fence in Mexico, and it was a staging spot for NGOs where they had like water and other supplies and things like that, and supposedly even like things that unspeakable things happen there too, right? Because they're trafficking, and these are like not good people, right? There are international treaties or laws that say that like you cannot have encampments like that near the border. It's like, I don't know what the distance is that's appropriate, but this is well within that distance. But because they call it a church, then like it's protected, and that's the scam that they do.
In reality,
right?
it's like MS-13 or something. That's
right.
the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. It's someone who's up to no good, and they're like
they're just using
15 feet across the fence, like 15 feet, right? We saw, you know, those baby carriers that you like put on your chest, and you put your baby in it, and you can like you know, walk around with your baby.
Yeah.
We saw those discarded by the wall, and Anthony pointed out that what they do is they have a baby in it, and they have it connected to a rope, and they like get the baby over the wall and lower the baby connected to that, you know, what, like that's not secure when it's held that way, right? But it's the best they got, I guess. Whatever, that's how they get the babies over the wall. Saw those trophies in like many places. More discarded clothing than makes sense, right? It's like, why would you leave it here, right? It's not a convenient place to change. It seems like you would want to keep whatever you have with you. You probably would. These people, like when you see them crossing the border, it's not like they have a like backup clothes, right? They're not carrying stuff. Like they're just getting across the border, and there's just tons of discarded clothing everywhere. It's all women and children. There's no men's clothes, right? So they're probably rape victims is what it is. And like there's bras and panties, and they're hanging on the trees in like many places throughout the border that I saw that. And what else that's notable?
Well, and so like I mean, the issue with that is essentially our government is essentially complicit in allowing this to continue to happen, because we refuse to enforce, right? And I say we collectively as like the federal government, right? But that you know, I mean, we're in essence, it's happening on our side of the wall, right? On our side of the border, and by not intervening in any way, we're just permitting this to happen, right?
It's like there's a wall that's Swiss cheese, and when they get through, we don't even deport them if we catch them. It's like you're in. Once you cross.
Well, and to your point, I just want to like make it, you know, because a lot of people will argue, oh, well, you know, where's your heart? Where's your concern for the people? And to your point earlier, if I didn't live in the U.S., I get it. I would absolutely try and get to this country. You know, I mean, there's a lot of incentives to live in the United States. I understand that. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the fact that all of these horrendous atrocities are happening to people on our side of the border once they cross, because it's so open and so uncontrolled that women and children are literally just being used up and chewed through like materials. And so if you want to talk about concern for people, let's maybe start with that. Can we just stop that happening? And then in terms of what you want to do with amnesty and all that other kind of stuff, that's a completely separate issue. But, you know, I mean, you're talking about articles of clothing in multiple spots, just everywhere. That blows my mind. You know, I mean,
there's no better way to describe it than it is a literal crime scene. Like our southern border, and like I haven't seen 90% of it. I saw the San Diego Tijuana border, right? And like it is absolutely a crime scene. Like so clear that very bad things are happening there. And it's because if you have a valuable territory like that, someone is going to control it, right? Like that's just human nature. And we're not controlling it. So someone else is, right? It's clear that the bad guys are controlling this area. They were intimidating me. We had a large group of men, armed men, well prepared in vehicles that like made that clear to everyone, and they wanted us out. They wanted us to get the hell out of there. These were not the Border Patrol were actually, it was kind of funny, right? I'll get to that part of the journey. It was near the end because like the sun had been down for like more than an hour at this point. It was like really dark. And for the first time the whole day we encountered the Border Patrol, and they came up on us as we were on this hill that's like a notorious child trafficking spot, I guess, right? And they were so not bothered by us being there. We were like apologetic, like, hey, like we're just going to film for like a little bit more and we're out of here. And they're like, oh, no, like you could stay. And it seemed like they knew that people were crossing, and like they know that they can't really do anything about it. It's like their job is not border enforcement. It is babysitting at best, right? It's like they pick up the people and they bring them to the place. And that's what we're paying Border Patrol agents to do.
Yeah.
And
well, and that's like orders from above, right? That's the policy from the top.
Oh,
being
absolutely.
Down.
Yeah, okay. I mean the way I understand.
I just want to make it clear they're not like being negligent or whatever. They're bound by orders.
That's right. And that's the case in like so many of these situations. The people involved on the ground are very patriotic and they only want the best possible things, right? And regardless of like what you said, they may have an opinion one way or another about amnesty and whether or not people should be allowed in the United States. Mm-hmm. But everyone can agree that like the child trafficking and the crimes that are happening at our border, they have to stop. And they're powerless because they don't have enough manpower, they don't have enough resources, and they don't have the authority, they don't have the commands from above to be like, keep this place safe. Like this is our property. Right.
So Penny, how do we fix this? What are the solutions? We need obviously changes of policy. Do we have new technological options like from Anduril? Right, I know they've got some interesting Border Patrol things that are happening. Do we just go back to building a wall like we did 4 years ago, or do you think there's a hybrid solution that may work better going forward?
I'm definitely not an expert on that, and I don't know what technological advancements are available. I know of Anduril as a company that is building drone defense systems, right? And I know that probably a lot of other things are involved with that, right? Like maybe they'll get into making their own drones. I'm sure that there are military drones that exist that I'm not aware of. This is just like not an area of expertise for me at all. But I will say that Anthony, our guide, mentioned that he is able to, by himself as a border reporter, get people to turn around before they get to the border just by flying his drone over to that area. It like spooks them and they turn around and leave, right? And it's like, this is just a guy with like a off the shelf, under $1,000 drone, and he's able to patrol and prevent crossing better than our official border patrol, because they're just not manned that way, right? And it's not a budget problem, because like them being there for the day costs more than this drone, but they're not using them.
So if the drones are effective, how effective was, say, the Trump wall in comparison to the older walls? Was it actually a deterrence?
So the way that he described that was that it was much more resistant to breaches, right? So like it had some combination of rebar and steel and concrete, and that combination is supposed to be very resistant to like the normal techniques for getting through the wall. And I guess they just send people there with like, because they could just sit there all day because there's no border patrol going by, and they just have like angle grinders, like battery operated angle grinder, $50 one, whatever, with the Chinese battery on it, right? And they just sit there, and if they just sit there for hours, they can eventually get through even this wall. But it takes like, I guess, all day instead of a couple hours or whatever, right? So maybe that helps more, maybe it doesn't. But like, to me, and it also looked harder to climb over, right? I'm not sure exactly what the technology was to do with that, but like the old wall had razor wire at the top, and it seemed like the new wall, they didn't even need that. Like you just couldn't get over it easily for some reason. Right?
And then, sorry, so my understanding was Americans actually tore down parts of the wall, right? There was a large effort to tear it down for pennies on the dollar, no pun intended. Is that right?
So I don't know that that is true. The way I understand it is that the materials that were unused, that were intended to finish the wall, were sold that way. I don't know that any of it was torn down. There were sections of the wall that were certainly still the old wall. And like I said, there were sections that literally had like a wooden broken down fence, like it wouldn't keep a horse in, it would just go right out, right? So like it's not finished, and if it was finished, I think it would definitely slow things down. But like probably what would make more difference than anything else, I think, is like if people got across, like you send them back, right? I think that would secure the border, right? Like, and if you bust someone child trafficking, then you take the appropriate measures and make sure that it doesn't happen again, right? Like, we need to get serious about cracking down on these things and enforcing. Like, I don't think we really probably need like a whole bunch of new stuff. We just need to like use some common sense. And like, I'm all for increased legal immigration, because I think we need as many talented, hardworking, patriotic people as we can get. And I know that, like, look at Elon Musk, right? Like, perhaps our most effective business person in America, right? You can come up with all other titles for him, but the dude's an effective business person, if nothing else. He's a naturalized citizen, right? So like, we need great people, and we may even have some obligation to help people. I'm willing to at least hear that argument. But I think it's undisputable that we have an obligation to stop this child trafficking at our border, because, I mean, like, there's lives and families at risk here, and like, who cares where they're from or what political leanings you have? That's not okay.
Right. I'd like to just quickly explain a couple of principles here from like a military point of view, right? So I have active duty background. I'm an engineer officer now. So like, the wall is just an obstacle, right? And in military principles, you don't build obstacles, whether it's explosive or physical, whatever, right? So we're talking about a border wall. Obviously, we're not using mines, right? We're building a physical wall to keep people out. Well, without eyes on it, it's worthless by military doctrine, right? You don't build obstacles that is not supported by actual soldiers, like covering it, right? So, if the enemy comes to it, you can actually do something about it, right? It's just designed to slow things down. What you were describing too earlier with like the guy using the drone, right? So we would do this in Afghanistan. It's called presence patrols. You're just going through areas just to show like, hey, we're here. Like, you better watch what you're doing, because we're coming around. We're not letting you know when we're coming, right? We're just going to sneak up and be around here. So when you do those things together, now you have an effective barrier, right? And so to your point, like, I think a lot of people have tried to attack either side of these arguments with like, oh, well, if you just build the wall, they'll make a taller ladder or whatever. It's like, well, yes, that's where the people come in. So when they try to bring the tall ladder, you go apprehend the people with the ladder, right? But because there's a wall there, they can't just walk. It's the combination of both, right? So we need laws that allow our actual agents and people working on the borders to do their job. We need policy that actually does not incentivize people to come illegally and, to your point, come naturally through the process. We should have an absolutely strict policy and punishments for people trafficking women and children or drugs. The fact that they can basically just come through with a slap on the wrist currently if they do get caught is insane. And then the physical perimeter actually has to be enforced enough so that your agents have time to react and adapt and do all the things. So, like, trying to pick any one piece of the argument and, you know, straw man the whole thing off of one little piece is not a realistic attack. You know, it's like you have to see the whole picture, because it's not just a wall, it's not just agents, it's the combination of barriers plus people creating a perimeter. Otherwise, you don't actually have a perimeter, at least in military doctrine. So I would assume border agency and stuff like that probably has similar tactics and techniques that they probably subscribe to. You know, I'm just an idiot army guy here, but from my point of view, it seems very obvious. But, you know, with what you saw, Penny, with what I just kind of walked through, is any of that actually happening? Sounds like no.
Mute Goblin, my friend.
Yeah, you're muted, buddy.
That's what happens when you double mute yourself. Okay, so like the obstacle is there, but it's already breached, right? Like the obstacle is ineffective to begin with. There are areas where the wall doesn't even exist. And then on top of that, there was some presence. At one point in like a 8-hour time frame, a helicopter flew over us and we held up our press pass, and then they were gone and we didn't see them again. And then finally the Jeep or whatever came by near the end of the night, and that was our only encounter with them at all. We saw like some cameras and things along the way. The biggest, most like technically advanced looking one that we saw was pointing away from the wall, not towards it. And when we're like wandering all around it, it never noticed we were there. So like it didn't seem particularly effective to me. Maybe it had some purpose that like was not obvious to me. But no, it's not, right? Like it's not happening enough. And especially because, like you said, it takes all of these different pillars, or else none of them matter, right? Like if you remove one pillar and the ceiling falls, then like it doesn't matter if the other ones are there. And I don't think we have one fully solid pillar, right? It's not even like we have that. I think like all of the pillars are left wanting. And what that means is that like, you know, like the unfortunate thing that happens with the border when they make it political is they pull at your emotions, right? But they're pulling at your emotions for like a false victim. It's like this victim of person that you don't want to let in the country. Like you're trying to deprive them of something. And it's like, I'm not trying to deprive you of anything, but I also want to say that I'm not responsible for the whole world. Before I'm responsible for the whole world and the problems of everyone, let me at least first be responsible for my own house, or in this case, my own country, right? And what, like, the real victims are the kids getting sexually trafficked on the border. And instead of pulling your heartstrings and saying, look at what is happening on our border, this is disgusting, these are kids and they're getting raped, right? Instead of saying that and properly appealing to emotions and like highlighting the correct victim, they're trying to like oppress you and make you feel like a bad person for thinking like maybe we ought to do something about this border situation and the fact that there are kids getting raped there, right? So like they move the goalpost to this like unachievable target of like, you need to now take care of the entire world or you're a bigot. And like that is so toxic that it puts us in a position that we can't do anything about the problem. Like we can't actually address the problem because we can't even talk to each other because we're bigots now for trying to stop kids from getting raped, right? Like that's insanity, and that's the reality of the conversation that's happening in America right now. And like, I don't know how we get reasonable people together on both sides of because like they certainly don't exist in our government, right? Or if they do, they hide. I don't see them, but we need to put focus back on this issue, and that's why I was happy to go to the border and do that and like try to expose it to the extent that I could. But like, there's also burnout with this issue, right? Like, people don't want to hear about kids getting raped over and over again, and that works to the advantage of the people that are causing all of these problems, right? Because then if you just don't do something about it immediately when it is brought to your attention, then it fades right off of the news cycle, and now it's happening like right in front of all of our eyes, and no one is even paying attention. And that's the reality of the situation right now. Like, who talks about the border right now? Not even, like, Trump's not even talking about the border right now, right? I mean, like, maybe a little bit. There was the meme of the cats, but those weren't even illegal immigrations, and those weren't even people crossing the California-Mexico border, right? Those are people that got flown in with amnesty, or at least temporary amnesty, to these cities like Springfield, Ohio, that just so happened, to Justin's point, were like, they voted for Republicans in the past, and now they're getting flooded with all these workers, right? Like, maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's not, but like, it sure is fishy, right? And that's what I'm seeing, instead of focusing on like this child trafficking or like whatever. That's like, I mean, look, I saw it. We saw, like, I mean, I don't know what you call it, like a rape van, right? And it had like, all the supplies that you would need, and they bring a black light in there and like everything you would expect, and it's like, that's like, all right, we got you across the border, all right, we're gonna like get our final payment and you go, or whatever. It's, I mean, like, this is real, and it's like less than an hour from my house, and no one's talking about it. That's wild.
Well, I'm going to go a little deep here and try not to go too long, but let's just be real here and address the elephant in the room that nobody's willing to talk about. There are 3 companies that every one of these politicians, especially on that specific side of the aisle, are all invested in. They all own pharma. They are now starting to own agriculture. They own the border, and they are trying to own everybody's future. Everybody hates Trump because the media is against Trump. You can call it Trump derangement syndrome. You can call it whatever the heck you want. But let's just be real. Everybody loved that man until he decided to run as a Republican. Okay? With Trump, what he said was, I'm going to put a wall up. It was going to be $4 to $5 billion. How much have we sent to Ukraine? Over 60 billion just recently? How many border patrol agents could we have put on the border and finished the wall 2 times over? I mean, these are questions people need to start asking themselves, and they're not asking because they're too blind, naive, or just, let's be real, stupid. Because if you look at the youth of America, all these interviews we see today on Instagram and everywhere else, they can't even name when our country was originated. They can't name any of our founding fathers. They don't know anything about the Constitution. They don't know that we're a republic. Everyone keeps saying save the democracy. We're not a democracy. We are a republic. Like, we're a constitutional republic. Like, I don't understand it, but not getting too far off the weeds, people need to start asking the important questions, because it's not just the victims you spoke about. It's also the families who are affected by all of these illegals who are criminals, who are coming in and doing rape or kidnapping their children and killing people or their pets or whatever the heck they may be. But in the long run, there are 3 people or 3 groups that are complicit here. It's this administration that's currently in office. It's the media. And unfortunately, it's the people who are in control of the border. There are different administrations that are, over that. But, I mean, like George said, a wall doesn't mean crap if you don't have people patrolling it and actually enforcing the laws of our country. Come in here legally, fine, perfect. I love that. We want people that are hardworking, like you said, who are patriots and who can, be here for this country. But don't come here illegally. Do not break our laws. And then, like you said, the only things you saw that were bad to other people or detrimental to other people were the kids and the children. or excuse me, the kids and the females. But who you see crossing the border more than anything, 90% are males. So, I mean, it's much deeper and bigger. I don't mean to go down the rabbit hole, but yeah, people need to be held accountable. And you can, say things about Trump all you want, but at least the man did put America first there, and we need to finish that wall, and we need to enforce our laws.
Yeah, there were some frightening statistics, and like I haven't fact checked any of this stuff, but these were things that were like shared with me on the tour, and it was something like a percentage in the 20s of the people that cross the border are pedophiles, right? Like that's shocking, right? Yeah, I mean, you say that fact, and it like makes you forget what you're gonna say next because you're just like, wait, what?
Yeah, so just for some rough lumberjack math here, there's been an estimated, 20 million crossings in the last 4 years? So 20% of 20 million? That's a large number.
That's a lot of pedophiles, right? And again, like I didn't fact check this stuff, so like please do your own.
I mean, even if it was 1%, that's still a boatload of.
It is. There
very
are
unsavory
yeah,
people.
Well, but you also have to remember the same party that's causing these issues defends those people and says, "Oh, love doesn't have an age." Okay, yes, it does. Like, come on.
Okay, there aren't many Democrats who think that. I mean, that's a
okay.
That's a bit of an extreme.
I disagree.
Position.
Yeah.
No, I disagree, but.
Well, let's just say I hope you're wrong, and I haven't encountered a whole lot on that side, but like clearly they exist, right? If the number is anywhere near true that I heard like 20% of these people crossing the border have that problem, like that's a shocking, that's a dangerous number of criminals coming into our country. And Anthony has like, he always has a GoPro on his chest, right? And like he ends up finding these areas where like there's people just like streaming in. So like he'll shine his flashlight and he's got his GoPro on his chest and he's asking everyone like, where are you going? Where are you going? Where are you going? And they all know where they're going before they even get here. It's like Chicago, New York, Chicago, like whatever, all, and you're right. It is. It's like, it's largely men. There are families, there are women and children, but it's like man, woman, man, kid, right? But all the clothes are women and children, bras and panties and like little girls' pants. Like, I mean, I'm talking like I have 3 daughters, right? So like I know like these are like 5-year-old pants, right? And picking them up on the side of the trail, and it's just like, wow.
Yeah, I think another thing that we haven't discussed really yet is going to be the cartel and fentanyl and all the issues we're seeing with drugs. With an open border, we're seeing just an immense amount of drugs flooding in, and even here in Mississippi, we're seeing fentanyl in hundreds of pounds and tons. And one drop of that can kill somebody. We've seen officers die from this stuff by being just exposed to it. And people here in America are getting exposed to it through money or through even shopping carts, right? So, there's another major issue there. Not just the gangs, not just the sex trafficking or the human trafficking. It's drugs and it's all this other stuff that's compounding with that, right?
It is, and the wall does nothing to stop the drugs, right? Like Anthony was describing how they just hand it through the wall and grab it, and they run it up, and there's these trails that they run up, right? And you can see them. There's like footprints and whatever, and they wear these carpet shoes so that they don't leave footprints when they're trying to like, not reveal their new area or something like that. But like, it doesn't matter if there's a big tall wall if you just like reach through and hand drugs, and all someone needs to be able to do is get close to the wall on one side and on the other side. And he was talking about how they take them and one person runs it and they just like bury it somewhere and geocache a location to someone else and they bolt, right? And then the next person comes to that geocache location and they might not even know what they're picking it up, and they pick it up and they bring it somewhere else, and it's like all these layers of plausible deniability and like separation from the people that are really causing the problem. And all of that would be so much harder to do if you couldn't literally just like walk up to the wall and like step over it, or just like hand things through the wall with no quick response to it, right? If you get a response at all, the way I understand it, like all these cameras and stuff that were installed to monitor the border, like they're not even there anymore. Like they're gone. So of course they're not being used. That's wild.
So Penny, what can an average dad do right now in the next 3 months to make a difference? Obviously now we're not going to the border to like, go go fight or anything. I mean, what can a dad do right now to make a difference?
I mean, like, look, we're on such short notice right now, and to some extent powerless in all of this. I feel like the only thing that we can do is be a voice for it, and like that's why, like, without hesitation, I agreed to come back on and do this pod, because it's like, even though I was putting myself in danger going to go do this reporting, it's like, how many people are being hurt because no one is doing that? And really, just a lot of people, they don't have any clue what's going on. They deny it as like biased right-wing reporting. Same as they'll say there's no cats being eaten in Springfield, and to a large degree they're probably right. Like if it does exist, it's a small problem, right? But then they'll use that same, I guess the shadow that casts in terms of reliability of information to just be like, oh, these reports at the border of child trafficking, surely they're exaggerated and whatever else. But like, I'm here to tell you, like, I saw the trophies, and like I saw the rape van, and like they're real. So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to ignore it? Or are you going to talk about it? Are you going to think Orange Man bad and vote for like a feeling? Or are you going to pay attention to what is important in our country and whose policies are going to impact those important topics in a way that's best for the future, that's best for our kids, that's best for you, right? Like, that's best for these people that are the real victims, right? Because I feel for every person that wants amnesty in the United States and for all of the problems all across the world. But I care most for the ones that are happening less than an hour from my backyard to kids, to innocent kids, right? And like, I think we need to talk about it. And I think maybe we need to like talk to our friends who want to ignore it and be like, hey, like a problem that I have, and I don't know if it's addressable in time for the election, but I sure hope it is, right? Like I heard 3 women in Starbucks this week, and they were like whispering to each other about how they're voting for Trump and how the left had become too intolerant, and they were like taking turns giving stories about their intolerant friends on the left that canceled someone for this or that or whatever, right? And they were talking about how they're going to vote for Trump. And at this same Starbucks, there's like a doctor that I talked to, and he has his practice, and he's worried to talk about politics because he thinks he would lose a boatload of clients if he did. And what that means is that like people are afraid to talk about what's important. People have this perception that like no one who's not evil could possibly vote for this convicted felon that they're like so badly demonizing. And like, look, he's done some things that like I wouldn't be proud of, that's for sure, right? And if I got to pick anyone in the world, he wouldn't be my first choice. Like I was one of those people that was offended by the mean tweets, right? Like I don't want the leader of the free world to be that way necessarily, but I'll tell you what's worse. It's like gaslighting the entire country and telling us that the border is not a problem and I wasn't the border czar, and like we're gonna enact all of these policies that are like completely constructed to pander to a certain audience for votes, but have no hope of bringing any prosperity to the country whatsoever. In fact, like if you play out in steps what would happen, it would like ruin the country and lead to like, us becoming the next failed state, right? Like that's what these policies would lead to. Like we've worked out socialism before. So like you asked me, I know, George, like you're trying hard to not make this political, and like I feel a little bit better about talking about it because I feel grounded in the fact that I'm not a political guy. Like I've voted every election in my adult life. I've voted for the Democratic presidential candidate. That is not to say that I voted only for Democrats. In local elections, I've voted for Republicans and Democrats. But at the presidential level, it has only been Republicans. And I am like so staunchly, or I'm sorry, it's only been Democrats. And I'm so staunchly against doing that again right now because I feel like it actually is the answer to the question that you asked, like, what can we do right now? We have to start focusing on the right things. And it can't just be us. We have to help our friends focus on the right things because we really are getting gaslighted. Like, I think that the biggest problem in America is that like we're being pulled by our emotions in whatever direction is convenient for the narrative that they're telling, and it has nothing to do with the truth, but it's still super effective because they paint a bad guy and they pull on your heartstrings and we're the good guy, right? And
Create
it's like,
division.
and it has nothing to do with what's right or wrong or good or bad. It has everything to do with how they can drag you along their narrative. And that is the cancer that's eating our country from the inside out. And the only way to solve it is to talk about it. And like even that has become taboo, right? Because you talk about woke mind virus or whatever, and it's like people will just shut you off right away on that too. And I understand because like people start talking about Zionism, right? And I'll just like shut it off instantly. And everyone has their topics, right? It's like whatever rubs you the wrong way. It's like you just don't even want to hear about it one bit. And this is one of those topics for a lot of people, but I don't know how we solve it, but I really think it's important that we talk about it because my honest opinion as someone who has voted, like I said, Democratic at the presidential level every time, largely because I considered myself like a socially liberal, right? And I thought that what would have more of an impact at that level was the social policies versus anything else at those particular points in time, right? So with all that said, like I am sort of a bleeding heart liberal, and I'm telling you like that now that I'm focused on what it is that I think actually our hearts should be bleeding for, I feel really good about saying that like I'm voting for the convicted felon, right? And it's a statement to the fact of like how much worse these opposing policies are because I'm not proud of it. It's not like I think it's cool or like I'm edgy for voting for a convicted felon. It's not about that. And like so many people take it that way.
It's not even about Trump though. You got to think like what have they done to the common sense Democrats that I would actually vote for? And I've always voted Republican. I would damn sure vote for RFK Jr. in a heartbeat. There's some policies I don't like, but at least he's common sense and he's willing to talk to the other side of the aisle and do things and implement policies that actually make sense. Same thing with Tulsi Gabbard. They're villainizing two of the best Democrats they had in the party and essentially pushed them out of the party and gave them zero chance of ever running for any like legitimate power.
And welcomed in Dick Cheney instead.
Oh God!
Like what a
started on the warmonger family. Like, let's be real.
I swear we're stuck in the Marvel extended universe, and we got the worst timeline from all the stupid offshoots, you know. And
Idiocracy's playing out. Yeah.
Real life. Here we are. But on a serious note, Penny, I agree with you. Get out and vote. Educate yourself on the real issues, not the narratives in media. Talk to people like Penny who have been there and actually have some real perspective on what's going on, and then make an educated guess or decision on who you want to vote for. The second thing you can do is write your state and local, representatives. If you get enough people to organize and send letters about this kind of stuff, that helps put pressure on it too from the bottom up, right? So we can kind of squeeze it both ways. And I do agree with you. We're kind of in this position, Penny, though, where it may not be enough, but if you care about this country and you care about your family and your local community, step up. We talk about how men need to lead and be the protectors, and this is, I think, an area where we've been failing for a long time, decades, where we've worried about more important things, quote unquote, but here we are. Like we're reaping the consequences now of staying silent. And so I think now is the time to write all the people, send your letters out, and just ask for the common sense thing here of, can we just stop all the crime that's happening on the border, regardless of how you feel about whether or not people should be coming in? That's a completely separate piece. Let's just stop all the crime first and then figure out what to do from there. But Penny, I just want any closing thoughts you had on just this whole topic. And I know you did create kind of like a documentary of your experience. I assume everyone can find that on X. Is that the best place to find it?
Yeah, the best place to find me and all of my content is on X. I do have a YouTube channel as well. It's Penny2X. I'm Penny2X on the X platform, and I spend all day talking about what I think is important, because, and especially the issues that other people might be afraid to talk about, because I really do feel like that's what got us in this mess,
100%.
was being afraid to talk about things. By like, we need to have less tolerance for gaslighting. We need to have less tolerance for when someone like tries to distract you from the primary issue. Like, we need to, as a collective, be able to focus and say, stop talking about like whether I'm a bigot or not. Stop talking about all of these other people who want to get in the United States. Let's talk about this issue of people that are getting trafficked at the border right now, and let's solve that one, right? And like, I just think we need to focus. We need to use our, what separates us from the apes to figure out what our real problems are, and stop jerking each other around, and like try to work together and solve them. Like, there really is no other way. And it's unfortunate that human nature is like really exploitable, and people are exploiting it. So like, maybe we figure out ways to train people to be less exploitable. Like, I think that's the long-term solution, is like, we need to be aware of when we're being exploited, which is like basically anytime you watch any media right now, you're being exploited, right? And like, but people are so clueless. Like, I talk to people who are like scientists, researchers, otherwise successful people, and like, they don't even see how brainwashed they are, right? Like, they just accept things that go in their ear, and it's like there is no processing. It just gets stored immediately and regurgitated. It's like, no, we need to think, and we need to stop getting jerked around. And like, that's my mission, is to try to get people to do that, and I'm sort of figuring it out as I go. So like, yeah, join me on my mission. Talk with me about these things on X, and let's be a voice for people with reason, and like, let's bring unity. And like, I'm all for Trump 2024, but it's not because I'm a Republican or because I'm a Democrat. It's because I'm a patriot, and I want the best for everyone in this country. And I hope that more people, take that attitude. That's my message.
I appreciate it, Penny. And thank you for sharing what you saw and your experiences. And, to those listening, whatever side of the aisle you're on, I hope that you just hear what the heart of this is. And that's that there are a lot of people being trafficked and harmed and raped on our border right now as we're speaking, and basically nothing is happening to stop it. So that's really what we want to have come out of this, whoever gets elected or whoever ends up being in charge of it, to actually change that. Write your senators, write your congressmen, all that kind of stuff. Beat the drum. We need to get active on that kind of stuff. And you can go watch Penny's detailed documentary on X, and I assume it's on your YouTube as well. So we'll link that as well to
I'll go into the comments on this video if you guys don't put it before, and I'll make sure that it's linked in there.
So we'll have it there so you guys can watch it. I encourage you to go take a look at it, because Penny, you and the team did a great job of actually showing what's happening. And I think it's a very eye-opening thing that most Americans need to pay attention to. So again, thank you for your time, Penny. We appreciate it very much. And get out there and vote, ladies and gentlemen. Take care. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks, guys. Love what you're doing.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you're on YouTube, drop a subscription to us. And if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It helps greatly. If you are also ready to level up as a man, check out Elite Sentinel Coaching, our program designed specifically for men, where we forge men into leaders. We turn cowards into kings, weaklings into warriors. Become the hero in your story. Join us today.